Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, back with another faction reaction, this time with Cities of Sigmar, with a legend in the field. I said specialist on a Facebook group yesterday and they went mad at me. Simon is in the house. How you doing, bud?
I'm good.
Yeah, you
Thank you.
sound great.
How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm actually, we're on the lunch break of, I'm TOing an Age of Sigmar 3 event right now. I'm on my lunch break. So perfect. I've just watched Severith roll 4 ones in his shooting attack, which was very
Oh,
good.
love
And
it.
I love it. I also wrote a list for someone who played against Alariel, and he went, I put 10 salamanders in his list, and he was like, these are so good. And I was like, they are good. They are good.
Yep. Where's that rule of three that we were promised?
So that's been really fun. But yeah, so I'm good. Thanks very much for asking. Very excited to have you on talking about Cities of Sigmar. So we'll dive straight into it because Cities of Sigmar has been like your number one love for a long time, right?
Oh
You
yeah.
even have a YouTube channel, right? Simon's Order
Yep.
Academy that you guys can go and
Yep.
find where you discuss Cities of Sigmar all the time. You regularly play against one of my favorite people in the world, Mr. Chris Welfare.
hmm
So like loads. Before we get into like what were they like in second, what is it like that you were attracted to with Cities of Sigmar and you still like about Cities of Sigmar?
So I got onto Empire in seventh edition
Hmm.
and eighth edition, and I kind of jumped out like basically at the start of eighth edition because I played competitive seventh, and Empire went into cities. So that's basically it. Wherever the Empire went, I went.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
they're very cool. I think it's such a great like book to pick up. Would you say though, like, is it new person friendly? Like that's one of those things because I think there might be a lot of new people watching
Yeah.
these faction reactions, and I wonder, do you think it's new person friendly?
No. So not at all.
Why?
The
Why?
the, the thing well the thing is that because there's like how many sub factions are there? Eight or nine kind of sub factions in cities.
Hmm.
And I think that everybody comes into it wanting to play one of those, whether it's Free Guild, whether it's like Luke Stone, who lives in Australia as well. He pretty much exclusively plays Wanderers or Scourge Privateers. You know, people play that sub faction. And what I try to do on my channel is show people that they don't have to play a sub faction, a
Hmm.
sub faction. That you can play Order Soup, which is basically what Cities is now,
Hmm.
with a few caveats to that. But it just showcases the entire range of old school GW, and I really like that kind of high fantasy aesthetic. And I think that because there's so many, this is kind of a gamey thing, but there's so many units that they can't properly FAQ and write rules for them to properly contain them. So there are a lot of hidden synergies that I don't think even GW knows exists, and you can kind of take advantage of those if you look deep enough. And that's what I like about cities. It's really deep. And
Yeah,
so yeah, to answer
just
your,
same here.
your original question, no, I don't think it's good for beginners, but I think it's really good for people who know the game and who want to play something that is rewards you for list building, which is my biggest kind of enjoyment from the game,
Mm.
and then also rewards you with good play on the table. So
Mm. I would say also the other thing, which is something we don't discuss tons, obviously on this wargamer, being more focused on like the competitive side, obviously narrative channel also is that it's also one of the probably the greatest modeling opportunity available to like hobbyists, right? Like we
yep.
had Mark Wildman here just last weekend playing one of our events, and his entire army was made out of like non-Games Workshop. They were all halflings, the whole army, and
hmm
it looked incredible and it was insane. And it really does feel like you can build almost any army into a Cities of Sigmar army. Would you say that feels the same?
Yeah, definitely. So I've got a few old models, like I'm using Glade Guard as Sisters of the Watch, like that kind of thing. My conversion's usually pretty straight down the line
Mm.
because I'm a pretty boring vanilla guy. Like I'm a white guy sitting here drinking milk from a glass. So,
Okay, good.
um, but yeah, so I mean, if you're playing Halflings, you really should be playing Nomad Feastmasters. That's a proper faction now.
That's the proper faction.
Um,
Yeah,
that's a proper faction. I like to think that I helped Darren with that book, even only a little bit. So there's a bit of me in that book as well.
perfect.
Yeah, but there's so many modeling opportunities. There's a guy that's What was he doing? Anyway, tangent. Basically, yes, the modeling opportunities are endless with this city, with cities, and I think that in the 3D printing meta, which GW is still 10 years behind, you're going to see lots of different lists coming out for people.
Agreed. Like, I just keep looking at cities lists and thinking I'd like to do this. All right, so cities in 2.0. You play a lot of cities in 2.0. I
I
don't
played a lot of cities.
Yeah, I don't really think I can point at anyone in the world. And if you are someone in the world who has played a lot as well, obviously leave some comments on YouTube if you're watching back, or fire us some social messages wherever in the world. You played a lot. So talk to me about how cities played in 2.0. Like, how were they playing in competitive play?
So I get a bit of stick for this because I never actually played what I thought was the strongest list in 2.0 and kind of missed the opportunity. I was going to play it this weekend at WARHAMMER, but unfortunately, because COVID is the thing, that got cancelled.
Yep.
And so the strongest list I think in cities was a bridge Hallow Heart build with 30 Iron Drakes, 30 Phoenix Guard, and wizards to taste basically. And I've gotten a bit of stick from some of your colleagues, especially Adam Mumford. Fuck you, Adam. Basically saying that I said that I didn't need to take that list to a tournament because I knew I could win it with that list. And so I've basically, I don't know if that's a cop-out, but I've been saying that for basically the entirety of second edition. And now it's third edition and I can't take it anymore. So, I missed that opportunity.
Well, we saw City's place. We saw Daniil, fantastic player for the Bad Moon Loons at the Super Series, play with a City's list. So this is just literally, if you guys are going to want to go back and watch how Cities did play, you can go back onto the T Sports Network YouTube channel, and you can see the breakdown of how Daniil played. You watch it on the VODs as well, with a bridge cities list in Hallowheart, just like Sam was like, because it's got a couple of things. One, it casts so well, but also it's got so much spell protection because it's in Hallowheart, and it does a bunch of shooting, and then it ties in with the other units. So yeah, I agree. I think that was, and Phoenix Guard were and are still, but were phenomenal, right?
Yep, 100%. They're less good now, but we'll get onto that later. But in in second edition, I think the two standout units in the book were Phoenix Guard and Iron Drakes, without a doubt, for respective, like melee and combat.
Was there a variety in playstyles in second edition? Did you think?
No, so I think that we were heavily skewed towards shooting because of the way that you can, well, at least all of my lists were. There are a lot of things that you could stack to hit buffs, and that's what's changed between editions is you only get a maximum +1 now, whereas in second edition you could get +3 to hit on the gross majority of things, whether it was from Ordinator and Hurricane, and whether it's a spell and Settlers game, whether there's multiple ways basically you can get +1 to hit. And then when you combine that with cities like Tempest, when you can also get +1 to wound, like why wouldn't you take shooting? Because the Tempest command ability, Hawkeye, only works on shooting and it's +1 to wound. So, of course, you're going to take a unit that wounds on a 3+ with guns at a 16-inch range. Like, that's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it works really well. Also, big shout out to Philip Kartiev, who's in the chat, who's one of the Russian ETC. He's a Russian ETC captain, I think, who also was dominating with Phoenix Guard for a lot of TTS events and also in real life. So,
Philip and I talk a lot. He's a good guy, and he's a really strong player. So,
yeah, super good guy. Yeah, big shout out to him in the chat. So yeah, a variety of playstyles. I think from the stats and what we saw coming through on the Sigmar Stats Center, we saw obviously some Hallowheart builds. We saw a lot of Tempest Eye lists being played, Phoenix Guard as well. So like they all pretty much fit in, I would say. So before we get into like winners and losers and how you think we're going to work in third edition, let's talk about third edition itself. You've run an event I think just very recently. Today,
I finished 2 hours and 14 minutes ago. Yep.
So thanks so much for doing this. It's I like how you've just finished one. I'm running one. That's like everyone's like, how fresh are you on Age of Sigmar? We're like in it. We're inside.
We are very fresh.
Very fresh.
Yep.
Give me some top level thoughts. Like, give me some takeaways. How do you feel about it as a game? How do you feel about new edition? Where you at?
Did you know that you can give units +1 to hit with all-out attack? And if someone's shooting you, you can give them all-out defense.
Yes.
For +1 save.
All of those are good, but not if you don't have a character nearby.
That's well, unless you got a unit champion.
Yeah. Well, I didn't.
You'll notice that all of the units in cities have a unit champion. So
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So third edition's great fun. I think that the meta has already shifted quite significantly. I think you want things that have high armor save and can output mortal wounds. I think those are probably two of the most important things in third edition that I've noticed. Just because armor save stacking is now a thing, because there's all out defense and mystic shield. You've now got access to two extra sources of +1 save. And so you can effectively stack out Rend.
You can effectively ignore Rend too, right? Like even
Basically,
yesterday,
yeah.
I was running Pink Horrors. I was given a Mystic Shield, and then when I was attacked, I was in cover. So when Rend 2 came along, I was still getting a 6-up save, which like they never had a save. Basically, they always just got hit with Rend 1. So the armor stacking's so good, right?
Yep. So really strong. I think that's probably one of the big changes that I've noticed, just because there's so many sources of +1 to save now.
Yeah.
Also, there's a lot of sources of +1 to hit as well. So obviously, but being only able to get +1 to hit for cities at least, that's a big hit, because again we used to stack +2 +3. The maximum +1 actually makes some units less useful and brings others to the fore, which is good. But the scenarios are great fun. The monstrous abilities and heroic abilities are good fun. The interaction between players is so much higher now. Like, you think it's literally just like monstrous abilities and heroic stuff, right? Like, that's basically the only place. And with redeploy and the other command abilities, the interaction between players is more than it ever has been in second edition, I would say. And I think that's only a good thing.
And
people are both involved in the game.
You also miss them as well. There isn't there's some unnatural points which we're going to have to relearn as gamers. The one that I have at the moment is when my opponent elects not to stop endless spells, which sometimes they don't go through that. They battle tactic, heroic action, and then they're like, I'll cast my first spell. I'm like, in between there, are you going to unbind any endless spells? No. I need to do that then. Like there's an in between. There's a couple of places in the game now where there's an in between. But yeah, fascinating. But yeah, interaction great. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, it's I think it's becoming a lot. There's a lot more. I'm not a big Magic player, but when I did, the stack, you put things on the stack, like when they trigger and when they occur.
Yeah.
I think that's a fairly people are aware of that kind of concept in wargaming, because a lot of us play card games as well. But I quite like that, and having triggers, and when they trigger at an exact time. And G-Dub's been, to their credit, been fairly clear with how when things trigger and where they trigger.
They've been.
I like the rules, basically. I think the rules are very clear. They're definitely not watertight, but I think they're very clear and a lot better than they were in second edition. The General's Handbook is amazing. I think it's the best publication they've put out in forever. I'm a big fan. Other high-level thoughts.
I agree with that, by the way, but I'm just listening. Yeah.
No one-drops. No one-drops except for when you put literally everything into a one-drop battalion. I think that's great. And having to drop it all at once, that was one of my biggest bugbears with battalions in second edition, was that you could just drop them piecemeal and still win the drops. Sorry, there's just so many thoughts. I love third edition. I think it's great.
I think that's all good. I also like the change. I don't know about you with the one drop, when they do one drop, and then you can see where all their deployment is, so you can counter deploy, right? So there's
exactly. Yeah.
There is a strength in the first turn. I would actually even argue that even going first is strong, in the way that you can go on a bunch of objectives and score more, so you get the 3 and your battle tactics, so you can go up quite high early. But so I think there's some advantages still to going first, but there's a very definite, significant disadvantage to having a one drop now, which there wasn't ever before, right?
Yeah. So one of the things we were discussing today was that I think they've missed a trick by trying to, in the scenario pack, we've got the 12 scenarios, and there are a couple that have score 1, score 2, score more, but then there are others that are the old scoring system.
Yes. So
we played, is it Savage Gains, the one where you can get 4 points for your opponent's
Battle for the Pass.
Objective?
Yeah.
Yeah, new Battle for the Pass.
Yeah.
So I think they missed a trick by including those. I think everything should just be score 1, score 2, score more, and they should have just gone basically all out on that. I think they've rolled over too many old scenarios into the new one. They should have just gone clean slate. This is how you score now. Every single scenario has this scoring kind of requirement, because when you play those games, you're not getting those huge washout results. They always seem close up until turn 4, turn 5, and I think that means that players will be happier with how the game's going because they don't think that they've lost it at the top of turn one. Which don't watch my latest battle report because holy shit, I lost literally at the top of turn one. So it's not a good showcase of third edition. But I think that I think overall the game has changed for the better, and I'm a big fan. So.
Hey. Same. I agree with all of those sentiments. Literally every single one. All right, sweet. So, Cities of Sigmar in third edition. Winners and losers. Let's go. Winners and why. Where we at? Okay,
so I kind of did a post the other day, basically 5 winners, 5 losers. I can't remember, somebody asked me to do it, basically.
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest losers, which interestingly enough is Phoenix Guard.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so they are now 175 points for 10. They used to be 160, so they've only gone up like 10%, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't get the max unit discount anymore, which I think is massive. So now you're paying 525 points for 30 of them.
Wow.
And they're still probably worth it. Like I played a game this afternoon with Phoenician running 2 units of 30 Phoenix Guard into Matt Gammy's core, and it was just an absolute bloodbath. It was an awesome game, and came down to there was 1 point in it at the end of turn 5, and it was only because one of my Phoenix Guard survived out of the 60. All the others were dead, but because he survived, I scored the keep your battle line alive grand strategy and won the game. So Phoenix Guard are fun. I don't think they're as good anymore, because this was something that Luke Morton kind of cottoned me onto, is that a 3-up with a 4-up after save is against Rend 0 and Rend 1 is basically as good as someone with a 2-up with no after save. And the maths don't seem to, in my head I said that maths can't be right. Just a base 2-up as opposed to a 3-up with a 4-up after save, or ward save, sorry, now.
Yep.
But they're actually pretty much the same. And so the big things that I think of one, that was a very long-winded way to get to it. Anything with a 3-up save, I think, is huge.
Yes.
And so Iron Breakers, big stonks. Demigrif Knights, I originally wasn't on them, but I think I've come around to how well I think that they operate in the current meta, because they got a 3-up base armor save, and they've got a shitload of attacks for output.
Yeah.
3 on the bird and 3 on the rider, all 3s and 3s rend 1 damage, except you do mortals on 6s with the birds. So that's not bad for 175 points.
And there's quite a lot. There's 4 wounds per Demigrif, right? Am I right?
Yep.
It might be 5.
Yep. So 12 wounds in that unit
for 175 points. Yeah.
Yeah. I think and so I wrote them off initially as well, but I think that Dreadspears Knights are actually not bad for 125 points now.
Really?
Because again, 3-up armor save, they move 10 inches, and they don't really output much, but they got 10 wounds and they won't really die. So yeah, I'm toying with some Misthaven lists with units of 5 Dreadspears Knights. So
wow.
that'll be coming.
Do the Dreadspears have the reroll saves, or did that get taken off them?
No, they've just got a 3-up base, so you can just buff it to a 2-up. So that's where their strength lies defensively for 125 points. They don't have the output of the Demigrifs, but you're paying 50 points less. So that's where you got to weigh up things like that.
Yeah.
All of our monstrous heroes went down in points.
Okay.
So, the Frostheart Phoenix lost 5 points.
Yeah, that blows my mind, because the Frostheart Phoenix was something that was taken already, right? In the last edition, already really strong, and now that monstrous anointed of Assyrian on Frostheart Phoenix specifically, everyone, and now cheaper. Incredible.
What were they thinking?
What were 5 point? I mean, it's only 5 points cheaper, but everything else effectively went up 10 to 20 to 25%, right? So really, it came down 25% effectively, which is bonkers.
Yeah. So I think our monstrous heroes as a group are big winners, especially the Battle Mage on Griffin, who lost 25 points. But because every single game... Sorry, go.
I was just going to ask, what is it about, just for people at home, what does the Anointed of Assyrian on Frostheart Phoenix do inside of a list? And also, what does the Battle Mage on Griffin like? No, it's okay. You don't have to be sorry at all. You're being great.
The Anointed on Frostheart doesn't die. That's what he does. Mm-hmm. He makes, if you take Phoenix Guard, he makes them immune to Battle Shock wholly within 12 of him. And he's got and this actually came out in the FAQs. So interestingly, you've got these aura command abilities, which affect everything within a certain distance. If you've got one of those on him, so his one is all Phoenix Guard units wholly within 12 inches reroll all wounds. So kept reroll wounds, not just reroll wounds rolls of 1, all wound rolls.
Wow.
And it also affects him because it's an aura on Phoenix Temple units, so he gets that as well.
Wow.
But it also means that the Phoenix Guard can then give themselves +1 hit or +1 defense. +1 to save, because they don't count as being targeted by that, because it's an aura that targets the Frost-hardened Phoenix, but affects all units wholly within 12.
Phenomenal.
So his stocks went up exponentially, and he went down 5 points. So good.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good.
If you don't have one, you should get one now.
Yeah, like, because you can throw it into any order list as well. In any of the cities list. It's like it either autonomously works incredibly well, or it works well as a part of a synergistic army. Which there are some elements like that, like Hurricanums also do the same thing, right? But like you have like access to those, and a lot of books don't have access to something where you can just plug and play something that's that good. Especially if anyone puts Apex Predators as a battle plan into their tournament pack, which you shouldn't. But you are going to need something that can play against Morathi, and honestly, the Frost Art could do that, which is crazy. My
favorite combo with him, this is just to tie this off, the new Arcane Tome that makes him a wizard. So he has attuned to magic. So if he casts a spell, which you put flaming weapons on him, so that you make his 8 bird attacks damage 3 instead of damage 2, that are on 3s and 3s. Yeah. So you give him the book, you give him flaming weapons, and if he successfully casts that, he gives himself +1 armor save as well, because he's got attuned to magic. So
wow, that's amazing.
I was running that today.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and it was amazing. I was playing Khorne, so it was shit. I was -3 to cast, and I wasn't getting it off. But with the one turn that I got it off, like insane.
Amazing. That's such a good, nice little bit of tech. Thanks to Bill Pulp for subscribing, by the way, and joining us live. Thanks everyone for joining us live. If you guys are watching live, big love to you. Don't forget that you can also watch this as a podcast if you're watching this back on YouTube, or if you're on YouTube, you can, if you're on a podcast, you can watch it on YouTube as well. Just let everyone know that little bit. But what about you still talking about the Battle Mage on Griffin? Why do we think the Battle Mage, is it just because he's got cheaper, or is he already good?
So he went down 25 points, which is great. So he's 275.
Right.
He got access to monstrous actions. He got access to heroic actions. Battle mages are 6, so they're not really good for like heroic recovery, because their bravery 6 is shit. So more often than not, you're going to miss it. Yeah. But because he's an amber battle mage, which means he's from Gur, every game in the GHB this series or season, let's call it, is in Gur. So he's always got a +1 to cast. Amazing. And he also always gets a +1 to cast if a Hurricanum is within, whatever it is, 12. If he's wholly within 12 of Hurricanum. So he's +2 to cast, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And the Phoenix actually does fight. The Phoenix is actually like half decent. Sorry, not the Phoenix, the Griffin. So I'm testing him in a few lists. I think Settler's Gain will be good for him. Mm-hmm. Because he's Collegiate Arcane, so he gets an extra +1, so he's always on a +2 to cast.
Wow.
He's good in Hallowheart because he gets an extra cast again, so he can cast 2 spells. The Amulet of Destiny is like absolute money on him because he's got 13 wounds, so you're basically giving him another, 4 or 5 wounds that you're going to save with an amulet during the course of a game. So he's actually 18 or 19 wounds.
Yeah, the Amulet of Destiny, just for everyone at home, is obviously the artifact, the generic artifact you get from the core rules, which you can take as an artifact. So just for everyone, it gives you a 5-up DPR or ward save, whichever one you would. Yeah. Big love. Big love.
So he's good. He's a good option now, and it's a really cool model. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. Can I just thank Gypsy D for resubscribing, also Skinny Boots for subscribing, also Math Mallow for apparently somehow winning his game with Sylvaneth versus Lumineth. Amazing. I'm going to find out about that after lunch.
No. One of the guys at my tournament today beat Lumineth with Slanesh, so I thought you'd like to hear about that.
I would like to hear about that. Who is that genius?
Oh, I can't remember, but someone did it.
So well done. Well done, that person.
Crazy.
So Monstrous Heroes, big winners out of this. I think that's true across all books, but there's some really good ones inside cities, right?
Yeah, there was some poor guy. We all know the Facebook's groups aren't that crash hot, right, on their
Yeah.
knowledge about the game. And so the cities one's actually quite good. And I tried. There's quite a few of us in there that are knowledgeable players that try and bring up kind of the base level of knowledge about the army.
Nice.
But there's some guy that was in the group who's just like, oh, I feel like we get really stuffed around this edition because we don't have that many monsters or heroes. Like I've tried a Hydra. What else can I try? And we're just like, what? And then like everybody was just like, we've got like 10 monsters and like 8 of those are monstrous heroes, and they all went down points. Like, yeah. Anyway,
We're fine.
We are fine. Cities emerged from the FAQs and into third edition in a very strong spot.
Yeah, really good spot. Right,
Yeah.
okay. What are the winners do you think that we saw from the book?
What have I gone through? The guys that are 3+ armor saves.
Yep.
The Hurricanum, obviously, because it's the same points cost.
And you took it in every list anyway.
Good.
Yeah, you took it in
It's
every
an
list
auto
anyway.
include.
Yeah, and now it's like again, effectively 25% cheaper than it was really, because everything else went up. So 10 to 15%. So that's amazing. And just for everyone at home, that gives you a +1 to hit aura, which is huge, very very important, especially as against because you can stack the pluses. You can't stack them for your actual rolls, but it means that anyone has -1. That's actually massive. Also, really good with stand and shoot, right? With Unleash Hell, because you unleash Hell at -1 to hit, but you get +1 to hit from. So you're just unleashing Hell at your. I'm right in thinking that's the interaction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So speaking of Unleash Hell,
Yeah.
the last unit I'm going to call a winner is Iron Drakes. They were already really good. For whatever reason, they only increased them 10 points. And like I know that in the world of Sentinels being 150, that Iron Drakes are more expensive. Like, fine, whatever. Sentinels are dumb. We won't go into that this podcast, but yeah. The Iron Drakes are really strong now because you don't have to screen them as much. Like you can still screen them, and if you can screen them and they choose to charge your screen, it's the stupidest decision they'll ever make in the game because they'll cop 60 shots in most lists 2s and 2s. Anyway, don't charge anything if there are 30 Iron Drakes behind it. You will have a horrible time. Even Gotrek dies to that stuff. So yeah, Iron Drake's really strong. They don't need a screen as much anymore because they can just unleash hell on anything that charges them. They won't get the full 60 shots because there's an enemy model within 3 inches, but you can shoot 30 shots at 2s and 2s, re-rolling 1s to wound. Like, do you really care? You're going to get 24 wounds at Ren 2 on something that charges you.
Yes.
It's insane.
Yeah, you can do super good. Simon, just do me a favour. Is your phone in the mic? That's just like.
Oh,
by
it
any
might
chance.
be. Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. That's just that.
Let's try that. Sorry.
There we go. No, you don't have to be sorry. It just happens. No, Iron Drakes, I think, very much so. What do you do, though, in the situation where you don't want the Iron Drakes to get charged? Like, what other stuff are you putting out there to ignore that? Like, what you talking about the units that were a 3-up save? What units are you putting in to make that happen?
Yep. So the last one. Good segue, Rob. It's like you do this like for a job. Is Dreadspears now.
Oh, wow.
So,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I used to play a lot of Free Guild Guard as my screens and as my filler. So basically to get to your max battle line, that's actually a big change to cities now. A lot of the units that I would take that used to be battle line and you could take them as battle line in cities are now coalition. And so you're actually having to rely on cities battle line a lot more. So you can't take Liberators anymore as battle line to fill out your 3. Not that you would ever take Liberators. That's a bad example. Let's go to Arkanauts in Tempest-Eye. Arkanauts, really good for 90 points in 2nd edition. They previously fulfilled your 3 battle line requirement. They no longer do that. So you need to look in cities for better options of battle line to take them in the army. And so one of the things that I think is good for screens and is good for taking to fill out your battle line is Dred Spears. So
really?
Yeah. So, because they're only 90 points for 10, right?
Bargain.
Free Guild Guard are 85 for 10. Okay. So, Free Guild Guard are the ones I'm going to compare them to because they were the previous screens and chaff for 10 guys. Because they were on a 4-up save. But because of the way that save stacking works now, they're actually on a 5-up and their shield gives them +1 to their save rolls. So, the best they can get is a 4+, whereas the Dreadspears just have a flat 4+. And that can go to a 3+.
That's amazing. For 5 points more.
5 points more, right? They have an extra point of movement, so they're movement 6 as opposed to 5. They have an extra bravery, so they're 6 instead of 5. And they have 2-inch reach on their spears. They're still 4s and 4s, which is the same as Free Good Guard, but on 6s to hit, they get Rend 1 on their weapons. So to me, for 5 points, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, of course, like an absolute no-brainer. Yeah, like that's incredible.
Mm.
I think that a fact also that they're a 4-up and can go down to a 3-up. Would you stack them, or I guess I feel like cities is going to be one of those armies where you reinforce who you reinforce and what you reinforce is probably going to be one of the most important conversations, right? Like,
yep.
So I assume you're not reinforcing those units, and you couldn't even make yourself kind of an uber block of 30, because why would you? Like ultimately, but like the fact that they start at a 4. And then for 90 points is very cheap. Like I've been writing a lot of Tzeentch lists, and I can't. Like I had 150 points spare, and I was like, does anything even cost 150 points now? Like, like is that a unit? I had to go and look to find stuff that could be 100, like below 150 points. So 90 points is amazing to put in a list.
Yeah, so it's really good, and I think there's an argument to be made for Blackheart Corsairs because they're 85. But you need to have a Fleet Master as a general. And I do in my Harkuron list, but I don't own any Corsairs. So I think there could be an argument to be made for them as well. Just because they've got so many, like, they've got hand bows, and so they've got a ranged attack. And they're a 5-up base, but they go to a 4-up against shooting innately. So there's arguments to be made. But I think Bleak Swords, Dred Spears, not Bleak Swords. Because Bleak Swords are another 5 points more. But they've got 1-inch reach, and on 6s they get an extra hit. So I don't understand why they're not basically the other way around. Like I think that the spear should be 95 and the Bleak Sword should be 90, but they're not. So I think you just take the Dreadspears for 90.
Yeah, of course.
Is my opinion on that.
No, that's great, and they can screen out those Iron Drakes. So just for me at the minute, big shout outs for you for winners in this edition, and these are winners are like Iron Drakes. Monstrous Heroes, the Dred Spears, and anything that already has a 4-up save, or anything that already has a 3-up save.
Yep, correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then.
So special mention with the 3-up saves, the Vindictors that came with Dominion.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of those guys because they're 140 points. They start with a 3-up armor save. They've got a 2-inch reach, and they do mortals on 6s. So you compare them to great swords who are more expensive. I think the great swords are now 150, and they start on a 4-up armor save, and do mortals on 6s, but they only have 1-inch reach. So I just wanted to mention Vindictors. I think they're actually a really strong option in basically any city for 140 points for 5. And just remember that. And I've had to clarify this a few times, coalition units, they don't count towards your battle line, but they still are battle line. And so you can double reinforce them in cities if they have the battle line battlefield role.
Just because it's early on in the edition, Simon, and I think that you and me are a little bit more practiced maybe than some people listening, could you just re-clarify coalition generally, right? So like previously you had a bunch of sub-factions and you also could ally in Stormcast, like so that it worked a certain way. Just talk to me about list building in Cities of Sigmar now in 3rd. What happens with Stormcast? What's the situation?
Yeah. So in 2nd edition, again, like the Arkanauts example before, you'd literally just take any Stormcast unit with battle line, so Vindictors. They would be a battle line option. They would count towards your minimum 3 battle line. They would get everything that has to do with battle line, like the objective scoring and everything. Now that we're in 3rd edition, those 1 in 4 units that you can add to a city's list, they're not allies, they're coalition units now. So the limitations on coalition units is that they don't count towards your 3 minimum battle line. But everything else is basically as if they were a unit from that battle tome. So you can give them obviously you can't give Vindictors artifacts, but you can give them enhancements as coalition units. So if you took like a Lord Arcanum, you could give him a spell, you could give him an artifact, you could give him anything. But they also can't be your general. So don't count towards your battle line, can't be general, are basically the 2 coalition restrictions. Whereas if you were allying something in, you also can't give it an artifact, or you can't give it an enhancement rather. So GW haven't really, in my opinion, done a great job at explaining what coalition is, and they've kind of talked around it, but never really actually talked about what a coalition unit is and why they needed to differentiate between that and allies. I think it just added complexity where it didn't need to be added, but they have added it. So
I would agree. And if you
yeah,
are out there scratching your head like, what the hell? I agree. I think one of the
yeah,
things I might try and do this week is just do like a physical flowchart for people that just makes it a little bit more. I think a pictogram or something that's a little bit more digestible, because it is a tad confusing, especially when it comes to cities, because cities is the most, well, chaos. Grand Alliance, ignoring Skaven, was similar, and cities really was the whole chaos, like was that faction. So I think.
yes.
So just, I know we're talking about winners for cities, but is there any other standout units? We talked about the Hurricane, for example. Are there other units that were already standout in 2 that you think are still standout in 3?
Yeah, just the Iron Drakes and the Hurricanum basically are the 2 that I think were already amazing, and the Anointed on Frostheart Phoenix. Those 3 are the 3 big ones that were already great in 2nd edition, and they're still amazing now in 3rd edition. So yeah,
Okay, sweet.
I think you'll be seeing them a lot.
Yeah, I think so. I think yes, agreed.
Yeah.
All right. What about what about the losers? Who do you think did badly out of the edition change?
So Free Guild Guard definitely loses because they get replaced basically by Bleak Swords by Dred Spears as your first battle line, essentially. I think they were one of the biggest losers to come out of the book. Again, I think Phoenix Guard probably like relative losers, just because previously you got the Horde discount. Now you no longer get the Horde discount. Things that were already bad that are still bad, Hydras and Charybdises. I know people get very defensive about their old Dark Elf stuff. People don't like it when you badmouth Hydras and Charybdises, but for 170 points, they're just not.
They must have never listened to this show ever. They're like the
exactly.
joke war scroll of Age of Sigmar. Just for everyone to be conscious of what we think of. Sometimes we talked a lot. The addition of the monsters isn't quite true. Age of Sigmar 3 is going to be the addition of the monstrous heroes. Monsters are always a problem. Because they've always had a problem, and they've never been particularly good. They're very rare. And if anything, a really good point I think raised by Stuart on the Ogre Tribes one was that they're going to also bleed victory points, because they're going to be be hard. You can't even heal. I mean, you can heal some in some cases, but if you're putting a monster in your list, you really need to say to yourself, am I going to give up a victory point potentially by putting a monster in my list? So yeah, I don't think that, but I think they've needed a War Scroll rewrite for a long time, right? And they just haven't had it yet.
They just need a points discount. I reckon at 120, you might be more likely to take them. I don't know about you, but I'd probably consider them in Anvil Guard, because Anvil Guard you can give them those Drake Blood Curses, the mount traits, which aren't actually they're not that bad. So I think that wouldn't be a bad shout, but 170.
Well, if anyone is upset about Hydras or Cryptids getting a knock in, I'll ask you to refer to the last time you ever saw a Slaughter Brute. Ever. This might be the first time you ever even knew it existed. Slaughter Brute is a Khorne monster. Did you know one existed? Most people don't.
Nope.
Or the Mutalist Vortex Beast. Does anyone know that even exists? It's a thing. Anyway.
It is a cool model, though.
Super cool.
I do like the Mutalist.
Super cool. Yeah, I thought it was good.
Other stuff that missed out. So the Flame Spire, the Anointed on Flame Siren, just a baseline Flame Spire. I know you have a few of them.
Oh, God.
So the problem with them is that they changed the way that when they changed how movement works, a normal move used to be a run or retreat. Now they're 3 separate things. And the Flame Spire Phoenix only does mortals on a normal move. So you can no longer retreat and burn things, and you can no longer run and burn things. And so I think that even though they went down 10 points, I think he needs to lose another 50 before I'd even consider him, because they don't fight that well in combat. They're significantly worse than the Frostheart. They've only got 6 attacks at base 4s and 3s, whereas the Frostheart is 8 attacks 3s and 3s.
Yeah. I as someone who's run them several times in matches to try and do well with them, they just don't have the and everything Simon was talking about there is they just don't have the output. When they get in, it's actually quite scary that the Frostheart, which did okay output, is now, especially if you upgrade them with flaming weapons, that's scary to me. I'm because already I don't really know how to deal with a Frostheart in some situations, and they make my army worse with the -1 to wound bubble. so they're so good, whereas the Frost Heart doesn't do any of that, and the best you maybe achieve is 5 mortal wounds, which is neither here nor there. Thanks, JBM, for subscribing. So yeah, I would agree with you. I still think that they're bad, and they haven't got better.
Yeah. No, I think if they change it, so I've sent my suggestions through to the GW rules design team, and one of them is that they change both them and Gyro Bombers got hit by that as well.
Of course.
So I think if they change both those things to be a normal move, a run, or a retreat, I think then those models are back on the table. But until they do that, I wouldn't be taking them, basically.
That's fair.
And then finally, handgunners, Free Guild handgunners and Free Guild crossbowmen, I think their stocks have dived in 3rd edition.
How come?
So again, I'm speaking about all the save stacking in 3rd edition. I think that having lots of attacks with no rend is the value of that has decreased significantly. And so even 60 shots with crossbows, despite the fact you can get them to 3s and 2s, I still don't think it's enough, basically, to make them worth 105 points. Because they've got paper thin armor, they got 6 ups at base, their bravery's 5. And I think that once they get charged, it's game over, basically. Handgunners I completely wrote off in the beginning just because they changed the way that their standard shoot works to just they can unleash hell for free against a unit that finishes a charge within 3. I still think they have a place because they have rend.
Yes.
And so when you have even just rend 1 and you're doing stuff, you're shooting an opponent with rend 1, you're still making them make that decision about using a command point for all-out defense, and that means they can't use it for unleash hell, they can't use it to redeploy, they can't use it to inspiring presence. So I initially wrote them off. I still don't think they're as good at 105, but I think that they may still have a place, but I think their stocks definitely went down as well.
Well, it's interesting sort of similarity, especially talking about shooting. So I played 2 tournaments last weekend where I was running Flamers in Zinch, and they're like, when I say this out loud, it's pretty crazy. They're 6 wounds. So I was running 6, sorry. Wait, yeah, that's 6 wounds.
12 wounds.
12 wounds. Yeah, that makes sense. 12 wounds for 350 points.
Yeah.
Right? Is insane with a 5-up save. And then they've only got the so I didn't even have them in Eternal Conflag, so they had no rend. So I switched up. I've turned that 350 points into 2 units, 20 pink horrors, which is 60 shots, and they've put them in Eternal Conflag, so they've got that rend 1, just like Sam was talking about. So that's where I kind of converted them into. Like, it's not quite as much spiky damage, but over the course of the game, I'm just going to do more damage. I'm going to do more shots, and that I think that rend's going to be really useful. I've also got weight of dice. Those 6 flamers would never do anything to Gotrek, but actually, if I throw 90 dice at Gotrek, maybe I bring him down. Like, that might be a way of bringing him down. And that is something you do have to think about. And it's very rare, like Simon's saying also, there's going to be a lot of 2-up armor saves, I think. And I think any shots that we do, like, if you can give someone enough dice, they're going to roll a bunch of 1s, right? I think that's going to be important.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Speaking of Gotrek.
Oh.
I think in cities he is going to be a staple, at least for the next 6 months, because of the way that the Gur battle mage that I was speaking about before, you can take him on the Griffin or you can take him on foot.
Okay.
If you either way, he's got +1 to cast, and he's got his War Scroll spell, which is +2 to run and charge.
Okay, yeah.
On a friendly unit, right? Yep. So Gotrek with +2 to run and charge and auto running 6 is going 12 inches the first turn and is going to be basically in the middle of your opponent's army with the smaller board sizes. Well, he's going to be in the middle of the table.
Yeah, all the time. Oh, God.
Yeah. And so the other thing I'm doing is putting it in Hammerhall, where you can also give him an extra +1 to run and charge with the Hammerhall spell Wings of Fire, and you can also give him Fly with that spell.
Wow.
So he's +3 to run and charge, and he has Fly. So Gotrek stonks.
Well, I mean, I think it just has to be discussed that Gotrek has got stonks so massive that it's untenable, right? Like, they strapped a rocket to him, like, and slingshotted him around the sun.
Like, he heals now.
Yeah. You could. I guess you could do a whole show, but basically you should probably start every order army, because you can go in every order army with 435 points in Gotrek, and then cycle back and be like, what am I replacing him with? Because I honestly don't know what you're replacing him with, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's
Well, Marathi,
well.
if you're playing Daughters of Cain.
You do it
For
or you
660.
could do both, which is the worst.
Or both.
And then have
Why
the
not
most
both?
fun game on Apex Predators. Like, the most fun.
That's
Like,
it.
invite your friend over. Hey, just Apex Predators? Want to play that? All right, so what about lists? Like, what have you put together for, like, lists from for cities, for third? What have you been looking at?
So I've played four or five games now, and due to the nature of the channel, I like to run a different list basically every time I do a battle report, just to keep so that people get to see different sides of cities. So we'll start with Hammerhall. My Hammerhall list at the moment, which I'm having a great time with, is Gotrek and 15 Vindictors,
Oh, nice.
and that's basically the meat of the list. But in addition to that, it also has what's the other thing that it has? I've got to get it up. Sorry, give me 2 seconds.
Take a moment. I'll just take
Lord
a moment right now while you're looking.
Yeah.
Just to say that Simon's got a YouTube channel if you guys want to go check it out, called Simon's Order Academy. If you want to look for any City Sigmar stuff, like he said, battle reports, list stuff, and he pretty much exclusively plays cities and against a variety of people and runs tournaments. If you want to go check that out, super worthwhile, and you should do so.
Order Academy is probably a misnomer at this point. I was intending on playing a lot of different order armies, but now it's just the Cities Academy, so that's fine. So I'm playing a Hammerhall list that has 15 Vindictors, 30 Ironbreakers, and Gotrek. So that one I'm going to have a lot of fun with, I think.
Right. Okay. And explain to me what the idea is behind it.
So the Gotrek's the one I just explained. You've got a Battle Mage who's a Gur Battle Mage, which has +2 to run and charge, and you've got Wings of Fire, which is +1 to run and charge and fly. So you can chuck that on Gotrek. He just goes up the middle and just monsters whatever the hell he gets into, right? You also have the 30 Ironbreakers, who are the guys with the 3-up armor save. So they are your anvil. You put them on an objective, they should not die, and they've got a Rune Lord with them, who on a 2-up gives them a 6-up after save. On a 2+ gives them a 6-up ward save. Wow. I should use the right language. Yeah. So really strong, right? And then you've got your block of 15 Vindictors, and with them I've got a Lord Castellan to follow them, to shine the lantern on them, to give them +1 armor save. Wow. So they're on 2s walking up the board. You can also give them +3 to run and charge. But with a Hurricanum, they get the city's keywords. They're hitting on 2s, 6s are mortal wounds, and then wounding on 3s. So that list I'm really excited to play, because it seems like it's got a lot of good things in 3rd edition. I'm just waiting on my Ironbreakers and Vindictors to make their way over from Poland, and then I'll be playing that list.
Not because that's where he orders them from. That's where they get painted from. Just
that's where they get painted.
People are like, why have you ordered those to Australia from Poland?
Why are they coming from Poland? Yeah. So I played a game with Hallowheart as well. So I've got a refined list basically for Hallowheart in 3rd edition. That I've got the 30 Iron Drakes in the bridge. People whinging that combo's dead. If you're saying that, you need to go and have your brain checked. That combo is not dead at all. Okay. If anything, it's better now, because you can basically get in Hallowheart, you can get the Iron Drakes to 2s and 2s, rerolling 1s to wound, -2 rend, 1 damage with 60 shots, and they can move across the board. With the revised bridge, you can move them 36+ inches now. So it's just insane.
Amazing. Yeah, like I agree with you. Yeah. Like, I think especially the Unleash Hell, I think there might be room for Ironbreakers, or a conversation about Ironbreakers as well. Because
so I've got Sequitors in that list.
Oh, okay.
That's the other tech.
Okay, tell me more.
Sequitor's got a 5-up ward. So Sequitor's got a 5-up ward save instead of their reroll armor saves ability, right? Mm-hmm. So that was one of the FAQ changes that came for Sequitors. And so in Hallowheart, when you have a Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger, he has a command ability, which means they can reroll all their hit rolls, but they can also get a 5-up ward, and they can get them at the same time. So they are my stand-in anvil for the Ironbreakers, just because I wanted to run Sequitors because they're cool models, and I'm taking a Lord Arcanum anyway. So. Yeah.
Of course, and they also Ironbreakers just take damage, whereas Sequitors also hit out hard.
Yeah, their hammers are real good, and if you put you put ignite weapons on them, and you've got a Hurricanum near them, they're hammers that are -1 rend 2 damage. They're hitting on 2s and 2s.
Ignite weapons also being the lore spell from cities, or one of the lore spells from cities, as opposed to flaming weapons, which is before anyone in the comments is like,
Yeah. And when you take cogs in that list, like you take shackles that you're casting on, usually a minimum +5. So that's the key thing to say in Hello Heart. You're usually casting on average at +5 with the gross majority of the list, because of the command ability from the city, which gives you take D6 mortal wounds and you get that bonus to cast on wizards in a bubble. So when you can do cogs and you're casting 3 spells with each wizard with a +4 or +5 to cast, like it's just you can't stop that magic phase really. And yeah, it's just real good. And then I've got Shadow Stalkers in that list as well, because 120 points still 120% worth it.
Yes. The Shadow Stonkers. Yes. Yeah, I forgot that they were called Shadow Stalkers. Yeah. I was like, does he mean Shadow Warriors? I forgot what the name was. Yeah, Shadow Stalkers. Yeah, so good. So much utility in them as well now, especially with the scoring like you were talking about. Also, my list is really, really weak, or the list that I've been running so far is really weak on... I don't know. I can't remember the name. Is it Savage Advance? No, the one where Hostile Takeover. The one where you take put 2 units in your opponent's deployment. Sorry, not deployment. Their territory. Whatever the battle tactic for that is. Forget it.
It's like Savage Spearhead.
Yeah, Savage Spearhead. I think that's what it is.
Ferocious Advance. No,
Savage.
Like
I think it's Savage Spearhead. But the point is like I have nothing in my list that does that, so I'm never going to be doing that. Whereas those Shadow Stonkers really give you that option to potentially be looking to achieve that later on, which I never have that potential. So like that's nice adding them in there for that. Amazing. Yeah. Thanks, Simon. Any other thoughts on this?
Look, it's just 3rd edition's fun. Get into it. Like cities is, if you want a really deep army, you want something you can actually sink your teeth into. You can find lots of hidden combos. I try to go over a lot of them on my channel. I obviously am not going to be able to hit all of them because I'm trying to cover. Like we just got, is it 4 new cities in?
Yes.
Yeah, we got Excelsis, we got Settlers Gain, we got Harkuron, and we got Misthaven. Misthaven, by the way, is actually I'm pretty big on that city now. I completely wrote it off in 2nd edition. I actually think it's legit in 3rd edition, but more on that later. Okay. But we've got like 9 or 10 cities, and so you've got so many different ways you can use your army. Regardless of what models you have, you can always put them into a different city, and they're going to play differently, and it's going to feel different. Yeah. And that's my biggest. Like you can't get bored of cities because you just shift to a different city, and it's like playing a completely different army. So that's why I love cities. Yeah. My attention span's really, really short, but because of the way that it plays, I can just play a different list, same models, different list, and it's like playing a different game. So
yeah, I would say that like if you were new or if you weren't new and you wanted something that's like infinitely like, if you're like I'm going to play 100 games this year, then I think Caesar Sigmar is kind of that perfect army because you can flip and around all the time. If you're going to play one, then maybe cities because you can really like hobby and get yourself a really nice level. But if not, like I think like you say, one of those armies that, and especially you'll develop so many little units that people won't know what to do with. They'll be like, I don't really experience that before, so I think that's good. All right, well Simon, this has been a delight, and I'm so glad that I don't think we in an hour. Faction reaction, we can really cover this. So I'm so glad that you've got the YouTube channel to express your that we can express your thoughts for the people at home, so you guys can go and check that out. So please do go and check Simon out and go check out all those videos. That would be great. Have you got any kind of like shout outs you want to make before we head out today?
I just want to make a caveat on the YouTube channel. I'm not a proper content creator, so I do have a very taxing full-time job and 2 children. So you only get 1 video a week. With maybe 1 battle report a week, so it's not like that. There's no stream streak. Like it's none of that. I do this in very much my spare time, which is increasingly decreasing, shall we say. Shout outs. I have to shout out Arthur Vulgaris. He's just a really nice guy. But also, I know you're laughing, but he's also on my team for Runax at the end of the year. So I'm playing with him and Smorgan, and our 4th player. Yeah. So that's about it.
Good. Perfect.
Go and listen to List Lab as well. Like Smorgan loves to steal my format and do it in his own way. So and not credit me at all. So you should definitely go and watch AOS List Lab.
Do the same thing. Do the same thing. Well, Simon,
That's it.
listen, it's lovely talking to you. Thanks also for what you're doing in the community over there. You're running tournaments, having people engage, and also, if you ever see Gammy again, just tell him I love him. That would be great. Um, uh, Units, Arcane Ring, 100% I could do that. Thanks for in the chat. It's just to add a question. That's definitely one of the things that I've got planned over the next few weeks, so don't worry about that. Thanks, Simon. It's lovely having you on. Thanks, everyone, for listening to another amazing Faction Reaction. I've been so lucky to have such amazing guests recently. We've got more coming. I'm going to try and do one for every faction over the next few weeks from players who know what they're talking about. That's the kind of point. It's like the community articles, but not like those. It's like important.
Not shit.
Yeah. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I'm going back to TO in event now for the rest of the day, so that's going to be fun. Again, huge shout out to Simon. Thanks very much. Thanks to everyone listening in the chat. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and thanks for watching on YouTube. If you do like any of this stuff, share it out to people who might like it around the world. Share links. Like, it's a podcast, it's a YouTube, it's a VOD, so you can do any of those formats, whatever works best for you. So just let people know about it would be cool. And thanks for listening to us, Wargamer. See you guys soon. Bye.